The killer left markers of mental illness across 2 states. The VA system knew he was troubled. He'd escaped a mental health ward. His family knew he was disturbed. We're seeing their concerns for the first time. Police knew that he was delusional. We're learning the extent of their interactions with the man who would shoot 5 officers on Sunday. And we at 9 News received a sign of his instability. We have found a message that the killer sent to us. While his name matters less now that the community's had a chance to identify him and come forward, what we can learn about how his mental illness was handled might just save lives in the future. We'll discuss that in a moment. First, Douglas County Sheriff Tony Spurlock in his first in-depth conversation about his fallen deputy, Zack Parrish. He told our Anastasia Bolton he is trying to compartmentalize in a way. He said that he discussed details of their investigation next week. His focus first is on a funeral.
Sunday morning, I got the call that this had occurred, and at the time we didn't know exactly what had happened.
Think of them as an extended family.
Several of us were at the hospital.
That takes over.
But we've brought in over 30 people.
When you need them the most.
As a law enforcement officer, it doesn't matter where an officer is killed. It affects each of us deeply.
This is a daunting task.
Douglas County Sheriff Tony Spurlock.
My agency is hurting. My people are hurting.
Knew he couldn't bury Zack alone.
We were going to need some assistance.
He didn't have to.
The other real issue is that, not only am I responsible for making sure that we get an appropriate funeral for Zack and his family, but I have 600 and some employees yet that need to be taken care of. And they're hurting. Many of them are recovering from wounds. And I just knew that we wouldn't have the resources to do that and to do it the right way.
It's typically too much for one agency to handle.
Stephen Redfern is a lieutenant for the Aurora Police and the president of the Colorado Fallen Hero Foundation.
We are able to bring in a group of experts that have done this countless times to help that agency so they can do what they need to do to grieve themselves and support the family.
The family of Zack Parrish.
He was a young, energetic young man that loved his job, loved his family. He was very passionate. He loved the Lord. He brought that with him when he came to work. He wasn't bashful about it.
The sheriff wants the focus of this week to be on Zack.
Again, one of the reasons why, we circle back around of why I asked for some help, because there's so many things that are wonderful about him that I got to make sure that are told properly.
His extended family here in this room is helping him make that possible. For next, I'm Anastasia Bolton.
Deputy Parrish's funeral will be Friday morning at 11 at Cherry Hills Community Church, still waiting on a decision on whether it will be open to the public. Within the last 15 minutes, we got a copy of a VA report indicating that the shooter had escaped from a mental health ward in 2014. He was captured and taken back to that facility in Wyoming. Then the Iraq War vet stopped requesting mental health services from the VA in 2016. At that time, his mental illness was obvious to many. To interact with the shooter over the last year was to know that you were dealing with someone disturbed. His mother told police he would often email calling her a tranny prostitute. She said he wanted to incite people and treated confrontation as a game. A counselor from Wyoming offered to drive to Colorado to help the shooter, who responded with incoherent texts every 30 seconds to a minute. Police records confirmed the killer's email, the same one he used to send a message to 9 News in November. He claimed to see a swastika hidden in the signature of a Lone Tree police officer. All of those interactions illustrate how difficult it is to determine when someone who's dealing with mental illness crosses into the small fraction of that population of people who may become violent. His family told police he had not acted violently in the past. Police did not have a specific threat to proactively counteract. And we at 9 News receive angry and delusional messages every single day, by phone, by email, and on social media. We report threats, but not simply signs of mental illness. When we heard a CDOT had shut down I-70 at Floyd Hill for a second time this winter due to sun glare, it got us wondering. I mean, the sun hasn't really moved, and neither has that highway. Marshall Zellinger's squint is a result of sunshine and curiosity.
Every January 2nd, whether it's 2018 or 1918, the sun should rise right about here in the horizon in Colorado.
On the same calendar date, the sun is in the same location.
It doesn't take a scientist to know the sun can be blinding while driving.
This would have been where the sun was as you crested the rise on Floyd Hill this morning.
That didn't stop us from going to a scientist with a sunrise simulation at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science.
You're coming up a hill, you're in darkness, and then all of a sudden you get to the top, and there's the sun right in the middle of the road, right in your eyes.
If you're not prepared for it and you suddenly have a blast of bright sunlight to your eyes, it's already too late in order to slow down and drive safely.
Not that Trooper Josh Lewis needs to worry about that with that brim of his hat.
My eyes are protected.
This morning, and on the morning of December 11th, State Patrol shut down I-70 eastbound at Floyd Hill because of sun glare, something rarely done in previous years. So what gives? I mean, the sun's still in the same place.
We're going to take precautions to see what we can do to prevent the crashes before they happen.
Why are you squinting right now?
It is really bright.
All right, hang on. I shut down this interview with CDOT spokeswoman Stacia Sellers until the sun glare was no longer a problem, which is really what CDOT and State Patrol are doing for drivers.
We do have our variable message signs up, so the digital signs above I-70 that warn motorists of upcoming sun glare issues.
Before they're blinded by the sun.
Before they're blinded.
I left my sunglasses prop at my desk. A trooper is out there helping make this call every morning now from November to January, similar to a school does when it comes to snow and are they going to have classes or not. I'm told there have been no crashes that resulted in the closures that they've made today and back in December, and that's why they're doing it, because they think if there's going to be a crash, that's going to back up the highway even longer than shutting it down for 20 minutes.
Absolutely. Anybody who's ever been up there and it knows it's terrifying. It is worse than snow blindness. It's absolutely wild. Thank you, Marshall. The horns that you may hear on the west side of town, that's the G line. Trains are testing on that track again starting today. We are nowhere close to announcing an opening date for that line up to Arvada. Regulators have to okay all the same technology issues that have plagued the A-line to the airport. You know, it's common in Denver to leave your holiday lights up until after the stock show. Well, the Denver Broncos are not going to follow that tradition this year. The bright red, light-up name of Sports Authority is going to come off of Mile High Stadium. I hear your cheers. Team President Joe Ellis tells us the name should be down in the next 10 days. The Broncos bought the naming rights back in 2016. They still do not have a corporate sponsor. As we've told you, do not get your hopes up for it remaining Mile High Stadium. They want the cash from the naming rights to pay for upgrades to the facility. Broncos aren't going to raise ticket prices for the second consecutive year. Of course, they're not going to raise ticket prices after that season. Same after last year as well. Ticket prices haven't gone up in the past 2 years as the Broncos missed the playoffs. They did raise ticket prices every year during their 5-year playoff run, 2011 to 2016. So next season, average price of a Broncos general admission ticket, $101. It's about the NFL average. Hope the holidays gave you a little break from politics, because now it is 2018, an election year, big one, the first midterm of the Trump presidency. Colorado has a race for governor and 7 congressional seats in the mix, and there are already some deadlines upon us. If you are thinking, you know what, I could do a better job than the man or woman in local office, well, today is the deadline to choose which party you're going to run with. If you want to run in a Democratic primary, you have to register Democrat today, or vice versa for Republicans. Same if you want to run as an independent, you need to register today. Monday, January 8th, is another deadline if you want to participate in Republican or Democratic caucuses. That is your deadline. If you're just thinking, I just want to vote, don't worry, no deadline right away, but you can pick your primary. If you're unaffiliated, you can change your registration at govotecolorado.com. Presidents love to take credit for good news. President Trump started the year with one that is a bit more than a stretch. He claims that he got results making air travel safer than ever. Brandon Ritteman is here to verify.
So let's have a look at the tweet. The president claims, since taking office, I have been very strict on commercial aviation. Good news. It was just reported that there were 0 deaths in 2017, the best and safest year on record. This claim needs a lot more context, because it's not the achievement the president would have you believe. It's true that 2 new reports out today show last year worldwide was the safest on record in commercial air travel. But it's a bridge too far for the American president to take credit for the safety of the entire planet's air travel. It's not like he would deserve the blame if air traffic control in some other country made a mistake. So let's drill down on U.S. air travel. The president is correct that we had 0 deaths in 2017, and that is a record low, but it's a tied record. The U.S. had 0 fatal airline accidents in 14 of the last 20 years. And the other 6 years only had 1 accident apiece. And before you go emailing us, we know 9/11 isn't on here because those weren't accidents. The point here is 0 deaths, thankfully, is not groundbreaking territory. But what about the other part of the tweet? Since taking office, I've been very strict on commercial aviation. This implies that he made big changes to air safety, and that is misleading. The Trump administration's Department of Transportation, which houses the FAA, reported only 2 regulation changes last year, neither of which have to do with air travel. The administration did push to privatize air traffic control, but that idea never left the gate with Congress. And these 2 guys running the FAA right now, both of them appointed by President Obama. Bottom line, sometimes presidents have a case to make when they take credit for good news. This time, not so much. Here to verify, I'm Brandon Rittiman.
If you'd like us to verify a claim, let us know. As always, you can check out all of our sources. We list them in our Verify articles on 9news.com. California started selling recreational cannabis this week. A lot of pot. One number blew our mind. And perhaps you are in the market for a beautiful historic bar. No building included. Californians are now buying recreational marijuana. Started yesterday. That means less pot tourism for Colorado, but California's sheer size would make it harder for an anti-cannabis crackdown anywhere. As California's cannabis industry wakes and bakes, we are still waiting on its first day sales numbers. Projections, though, from a marijuana industry group as well as agriculture experts at UC Davis think that Californians are going to buy as much pot in a day as Coloradans did in our first month of recreational sales. Coloradans bought $14.7 million worth of weed in month 1. Compare that to month 1 in Oregon, 14 mil, Washington, 3.8 mil. Week, and Nevada, 27.1 million, but they let medical shops sell recreational too. You can roll all those into one big fat number, and you're nowhere near the buzz California will create. Up to $7 billion in sales a year, which would double America's recreational cannabis market.
Here in the 9 News Weather Center, temperatures actually felt pretty good this afternoon with that sunshine. We made our way into the 40s. A completely different story. What's going on across the eastern side of the country? Look at those temperatures. They're at 2 degrees in Chicago, 9 in Cincinnati, and that cooler air pooling all the way to the south with mid-30s in New Orleans. The jet stream riding high across the west coast, keeping us warm and dry. Now we're just sitting on the fringe of that cold Arctic air that will be with our friends across the eastern side of the country for the next couple of days. Tonight here in Denver, down to 18 degrees, mostly clear skies, looking good. And tomorrow we're back to the upper 40s and a partly sunny skies. A nice, mild, dry day across the entire city and state for that matter too. Daytime highs in the mid-30s in Steamboat, Winter Park, Leadville too, and 40s across the eastern plains. So your 7-day forecast just showing that nice little warm up as we wind down on this work week. 50s on Thursday and into Friday. So far the weekend kind of split. For the most part, Saturday highs in the upper 50s, courtesy of some strong winds, but it's blowing in a storm. That one looks to roll in by Sunday for us here in the metro area. Right now, cooler temperatures in Kyle, maybe a little bit of light snow.
Thank you, Danielle. We just got a note from Cherry Hills Community Church. That is where Deputy Zack Parrish's funeral is going to be held on Friday. They tell us that they are being overwhelmed with calls from the public, people asking if they can come. They're respectfully asking that people just hold off with the phone calls. We've been trying to update you a couple of times here a day on whether or not it's going to be open to the public. We'll continue to do so, but please spread the word to folks you know to stop calling Cherry Hills Community Church. We'll be right back. I once walked into a bar on South Broadway, could not get a drink to save my life. And with good reason. It was a beautiful old Western bar that was assembled and empty inside an antique shop. These enormous antique bars are brought to Denver from across the West, and they sell to businesses and private collectors for astonishing amounts of money. We get a closer look through the lens of photojournalist Corky Scholl.
Antique Broker is an antique store that's been around since the 1980s.
The front, when they come in, they see all the enormous bars, and it's sort of more like a museum. It's just like you were to walk into the bar 100 years ago.
I love the antique back bars. They bring people into the store just to take a look at them.
The history is great. I mean, people love to know who was there. This one came from Tucson, Arizona. This bar here came out of Chickasha, Oklahoma. This bar is from a house of ill repute down in Texas, close to Austin. This bar is actually a Colorado bar, and it came from Creed, Colorado. This one's from Glasgow, Kansas. This bar came from Boston on the East Coast. This bar came from Lincoln, Nebraska. This one came out of Oklahoma City. This one is from Deadwood, South Dakota, and it has a sister bar up there that was from the Queen of England.
What's interesting about that bar is it was in Deadwood at the same time Wild Bill Hickok was.
They've been in some of the harshest environments. If you think about it, the bars and the way they used to clean the saloons and stuff, they just used water and mops and stuff, and they'd slap it down. Because there's no instruction manuals on how to take them apart, put them back together.
You can just imagine what the bars could say if they could talk.
It's just, they're neat history to them.
How about that? The antique broker tells us more than half the bars they sell get sent out of state. The farthest away they've ever shipped one is Australia. One of our favorite Coloradans, Chris Bombardier, is pretty close to finishing his quest for the 7 summits, getting to the highest peak on every continent. We've told you Chris's story. He has severe hemophilia. He climbs in part to prove that anybody can do anything that they set out to accomplish. We followed him as he summited Everest, believed to be the first person with severe hemophilia ever to get to the top of Everest. He's now in Antarctica working on Mount Vinson. He is at base camp and the weather is good, so they're moving on to Camp 1 tomorrow. We will keep you updated. All right, so I did not want to put this in the program tonight, but I was overruled by the women who run next, Carrie and Linda. And if there is one thing that I am good at, it is following directions. Like when my wife asked for a slow-close toilet seat cover a year ago, and today I finally got around to doing it. It took me 2 minutes to install and 5 minutes to make a video commemorating my accomplishment.
Baby, are you down, 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 even if the sky is falling down,
The ingenuity of Coloradans continues to amaze and inspire us, like the guy, you know it was a guy, who replaced a busted headlight with bottles. Carol Knapp spotted it, thought somebody might be flunking an auto repair class. I would sooner think, Carol, it's someone who's getting straight A's in DIY. It is a sign that agitation is a way to succeed in both laundry and politics. Take a look at this, spotted by our own politics reporter Brandon Ritterman walking around his neighborhood. MAGA-sized washers and dryers. They are making laundry great again. What exactly is a MAGA-sized washer and dryer? There are much, much better jokes that I can make, but I will leave those for the late night shows. I invite you to share that image with them. We finished with your feedback. Molly writes in and says, thanks for using the shooter when discussing the officer's death. Sharing information that will help others is important. Killer's name is useless. Yeah, Molly, once we get past the point that people know who the shooter was and have an opportunity to come forward with information that could be helpful in the investigation, that is the point in which the no notoriety movement really wants to be heard to say social science suggests we're better off if we just forget the name and forget the image. A note from Judy who says, I'm going to insist that my friends, family, and coworkers not call while your program is on, the only thing I watch. Well, just tell them to watch too, Judy, and then you won't have that issue. And Cassandra writes, bad news, Kyle, you're going to slam every toilet lid like a maniac for the foreseeable future. Let's do it nice and slow, just like the lid.